When my sister dropped her kids at my house for 8 weeks, I threatened to call police. She laughed and said, "I'll tell your job you're crazy and get you fired," then hung up. I pulled out my phone to record her next call because what my sister didn't know was that I'm a senior financial analyst at a Fortune 500 company, and I never make a move without documenting everything first. My name is Lisa, and at 28, I never expected my own sister to weaponize her children against me like this. My sister Emma had always been the golden child, stunning blonde hair, green eyes, and a smile that made everyone forget she was completely toxic. Growing up, my mom constantly compared us, telling me to dress like Emma, asking why I couldn't be more like Emma, making it crystal clear that I was the disappointing backup child. Emma used this dynamic to torment me for years, even sleeping with my high school boyfriend just because she could. But while Emma was partying through college on my parents' dime and eventually dropping out pregnant, I was building something she'd never understand. I graduated summa cum laude with dual degrees in finance and economics, landed a position at Blackstone and Associates straight out of university, and had been climbing the corporate ladder ever since. At 28, I was pulling in $185,000 annually with a corner office and a reputation for dismantling failing businesses through forensic financial analysis. Emma knew none of this. To her, I was still the quiet, mousy little sister she could push around. She had no idea I owned a $450,000 condo in the city's financial district, drove a BMW, and had professional relationships with some of the best lawyers and investigators in the state. My job required me to build airtight cases against corporate fraud, and I'd gotten very good at it. When Emma's kids, Tyler, 10, and Mason, 7, showed up at my door that Saturday morning with overnight bags, looking confused and scared, my first instinct wasn't panic. It was documentation. I immediately started taking photos of their arrival, the timestamp, their obvious confusion about why they were there. These boys barely knew me because Emma had systematically kept them away from family who might notice her neglect. The kids explained that their mom said she was going on vacation for 8 weeks and I'd agreed to watch them. I'd had exactly 0 contact with Emma since last Christmas when she'd made snide comments about my weight in front of everyone. The audacity of dumping her children on someone she actively despised told me everything I needed to know about how desperate her situation had become. I called Emma 17 times before she finally answered. Her voice had that entitled tone I remembered from childhood when she expected everyone to clean up her messes. When I told her there was absolutely no way I was watching her kids for 2 months and threatened to call CPS, that's when she played what she thought was her ace card. "Listen carefully, you pathetic loser." Emma's voice turned ice cold. "I know you're bipolar. I know you've had breakdowns. I will call your precious job and tell them you're off your medication and having psychotic episodes. They'll fire you so fast your head will spin, and then you'll go back to being the nobody you've always been. So you can either watch my kids or lose everything you think makes you special." What Emma didn't realize was that I'd been recording the call from the moment she answered. In my line of work, you document everything because people lie, especially when money and consequences are involved. Her blackmail threat was now preserved in crystal clear audio, and blackmail happens to be a felony. More importantly, Emma had made a critical error in her intelligence gathering. I don't have bipolar disorder. I'd gone to therapy briefly after her boyfriend betrayal in high school, something my mother had blown completely out of proportion because she needed to justify Emma's behavior somehow. My actual medical records would obliterate Emma's claims, and I had 5 years of documentation proving my mental health stability for my security clearance at work, but I let Emma think she'd won. "Fine," I said. "I'll watch them." She hung up laughing. The boys were watching me nervously from the living room. Tyler, the older one, looked like he'd been expecting adults to fail him. That heartbreaking resignation kids develop when their parents are unreliable. Mason still had that innocent confusion that broke my heart. I knelt down to their level. Guys, I need you to know that what just happened isn't normal or okay. Adults don't dump kids with strangers, even family strangers. But you're safe here, and we're going to figure this out together. Over the next few hours, the real picture emerged. Emma had been telling people she was going to California to visit friends, but the boys mentioned hearing her on the phone talking about someone named Dimitri, who was flying her somewhere amazing. They'd been living primarily with Emma's on-and-off boyfriend, Jake, who apparently had a drinking problem and regularly screamed at them for normal kid behavior. Their clothes were worn and ill-fitting. Mason's shoes had holes. Tyler mentioned they usually ate cereal for dinner because Mom's always tired. These weren't just neglected kids. They were being systematically failed by every adult in their lives. I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to destroy Emma legally, strategically, and financially. But first, I needed to build an unshakable case. Monday morning, I walked into my office and immediately scheduled time with our corporate legal team. Blackstone and Associates keep several attorneys on retainer for our forensic work, and I'd built strong professional relationships with all of them. I explained the situation to Rebecca Foster, our lead litigation attorney, and played Emma's blackmail recording. "This is textbook criminal blackmail," Rebecca confirmed. "But more importantly, for your situation, this demonstrates she's using coercion to avoid her parental responsibilities. We can use this in multiple ways." Rebecca introduced me to David Hoffman, a family law attorney who specialized in emergency custody situations. David reviewed my documentation and Emma's recorded threats with the systematic approach I recognized from corporate cases. "Your sister made several critical mistakes," David explained. "First, abandoning minor children with someone who didn't consent to care for them is child abandonment. Second, using blackmail to coerce childcare makes this criminal coercion. Third, making false statements about mental health to employers can constitute defamation and harassment." David's strategy was brilliant. Instead of just defending against Emma's threats, we were going to systematically dismantle her entire position. He filed emergency paperwork with Child Protective Services documenting the abandonment and coercion. He prepared defamation countersuits ready to file the moment Emma contacted my employer, and he began building a case for me to seek emergency custody of the boys. But I wanted Emma to follow through with her threat first. I wanted her to commit the crime in a way that would be impossible to deny. So I waited. I spent the week working from home, getting to know Tyler and Mason while building a comprehensive record of their situation. I documented their inadequate clothing, their stories about home life, their behavioral signs of neglect. I took them shopping for proper clothes and shoes, recording the receipts as evidence of Emma's failure to provide basic necessities. The boys bloomed with basic attention and care. Tyler admitted he'd never had an adult ask about his homework before. Mason cried when I made him a proper breakfast, saying he couldn't remember the last time someone cooked for him. Their reactions were heartbreaking and infuriating, and they gave me all the motivation I needed to end Emma's parental rights permanently. Thursday morning, my assistant Jennifer called me at home. "Lisa, I have your supervisor online too. He says it's urgent and confidential." Perfect. Emma had made her move. I took the call with my recording app running. My supervisor, James Blackstone, sounded genuinely concerned. "Lisa, I received a very disturbing call this morning from someone claiming to be your sister. She said you're having a mental health crisis and might be dangerous to yourself or others. She provided specific details about alleged psychiatric episodes and claimed you'd stopped taking medication." "James," I said calmly, "I'm going to email you something right now. Please listen to it before we continue this conversation." I sent Emma's blackmail recording. 3 minutes later, James called back. "Jesus Christ, Lisa. She actually threatened to make false reports about your mental health to get you fired. This is criminal behavior." "It gets worse," I told him. "She abandoned her children with me to coerce me into providing free childcare. I'm working with attorneys to file criminal charges and seek emergency custody of her sons." James was quiet for a moment. "What can the company do to support you? This is clearly a situation where an employee is being criminally harassed." Blackstone and Associates' response was everything I could have hoped for. They documented Emma's call as a harassment incident. They provided me with paid family leave to handle the legal situation. And James made it clear that any further contact from Emma would be treated as criminal harassment of a company employee, with full legal response. Emma called me that afternoon, clearly expecting to hear that I'd been fired. "How's unemployment treating you, loser?" she laughed. "I told you I'd destroy your pathetic little life." "Actually, Emma, my employer is very interested in the criminal harassment complaint we're filing against you. They've escalated this to corporate security." The silence was beautiful. "You're lying," she said, but her voice had lost its confidence. "I'm also filing for emergency custody of Tyler and Mason. Child abandonment and criminal coercion tend to impress family court judges. Oh, and blackmail is a felony in this state, so you're looking at criminal charges too." Emma started screaming, calling me every name she could think of, threatening to make me pay when she got back, all while I recorded every word. "When are you coming back, Emma?" I asked sweetly. "Because CPS would like to speak with you." She hung up. David Hoffman fast-tracked our emergency custody filing. With Emma's recorded threats, evidence of child abandonment, and documentation of the boys' neglect, we had an exceptionally strong case. The judge reviewed our evidence and granted temporary custody pending a full hearing. When Emma finally returned from her vacation with Dimitri, who turned out to be a 55-year-old married businessman who'd been paying for her company, she found CPS investigators waiting at her apartment. She also found criminal charges for blackmail, harassment, child abandonment, and reckless endangerment. Emma's public defender was a young attorney who took one look at our evidence and basically advised her to plea bargain. The recorded blackmail was damning. The child abandonment was undeniable. The harassment of my employer created additional criminal liability. But Emma, true to form, thought she could charm her way out of consequences. The custody hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Emma showed up with her on-again, off-again boyfriend Jake, both of them clearly thinking they could convince the judge that I was some bitter sister trying to steal her kids. David Hoffman systematically destroyed their position. He played Emma's blackmail recording in court. He presented evidence of the boys' neglect, photos of their inadequate clothing, medical records showing missed appointments, school records of frequent absences and late arrivals. He documented Emma's abandonment of the children and her complete failure to arrange proper care. Then he presented my evidence, financial records showing my $185,000 salary and stable housing, character references from my employer, including James Blackstone's statement that I was one of their most trusted senior analysts, medical records definitively disproving Emma's false mental health claims, evidence of the boys' dramatically improved condition under my care. The contrast was devastating. Emma, unemployed with a criminal record, against me, a successful professional with resources and stability. Emma's lawyer made a desperate argument that blood families should stay together, that Emma deserved a chance to prove herself as a mother. The judge listened politely, then delivered the verdict that changed everything. "Ms. Emma Patterson, you criminally abandoned your children to coerce unpaid childcare from a sibling you had no relationship with. You committed blackmail and harassment when your coercion was refused. Your children show clear signs of long-term neglect under your care, while showing remarkable improvement under your sister's care. Custody is awarded permanently to Lisa Patterson, with supervised visitation rights to be determined after you complete court-ordered parenting classes and substance abuse counseling." Emma's scream of rage echoed through the courthouse. "This isn't over, you bitch! You can't steal my kids!" But it was over. Emma had no job, no resources, and a criminal record. I had legal custody, financial stability, and 2 boys who'd already started calling me Aunt Lisa instead of hiding when adults raised their voices. The criminal charges took longer to resolve, but Emma's recorded threats made conviction inevitable. She plea bargained to avoid prison time, accepting 2 years probation, mandatory counseling, and a permanent restraining order preventing her from contacting me or the boys except during court-supervised visits. 6 months later, Tyler made honor roll for the first time in his academic career. Mason joined a little league team and discovered he loved baseball. They had their own rooms, regular meals, help with homework, and an adult who showed up to school events and medical appointments. Emma completed exactly none of her court-ordered requirements. She violated probation within 3 months and spent 6 months in county jail. Jake disappeared entirely when he realized Emma had no money and significant legal problems. My mother called once to scream at me for destroying the family. I reminded her that she'd spent decades enabling Emma's behavior and hung up. I haven't spoken to either of them since. Today, Tyler is 13 and wants to study engineering. Mason is 10 and still plays baseball twice a week. They both know the truth about their mother's choices, age appropriately, and they understand that sometimes adults fail, but other adults step up. Emma occasionally sends cards on birthdays that the boys throw away unread. She lost her supervised visitation rights when she showed up drunk to a court-ordered session. Her parental rights were officially terminated last year. The most satisfying part wasn't Emma's criminal conviction or losing her kids. It was the boys thriving with stability, education, and care. Everything Emma couldn't provide because she was too selfish to prioritize anyone but herself. People sometimes ask if I feel bad about breaking up a family. I remind them that Emma broke up her own family when she chose a sugar daddy vacation over her children's safety. I just documented her choices and let the legal system respond appropriately. Emma learned too late that underestimating the quiet sister with the boring job was the biggest mistake of her entitled life. She gambled everything on a blackmail scheme against someone who builds legal cases for a living. She lost everything, and Tyler and Mason gained the stable family life they always deserved.